This first session today is all about energy and how the concept interrelates among the judging categories, but even more than that, how those elements impact our performance. So those of you who maybe have worked with me or have seen me know that my number one focus is always about what the audience is experiencing. That's true of quartets, of choruses, of an orchestra, if I'm in front of one. Whatever the ensemble is, our job is to present something to an audience. The thing about barbershop specifically is that we love to sing it with such a incredible passion, right? That for many of us, we wouldn't care if we ever sang for an audience because we love ringing chords, right? It's why we stay up on Saturday night of convention weekend with our libations, tagging and having that experience because it is as gratifying for us as it is for anybody else. But let's remember first and foremostly that we are artists and performers who have the power to transform lives. And no matter what the level of your quartet or chorus, that power exists. You can make someone smile, and that gift is a powerful gift. You can encourage someone to have a memory with the song that you sing, and that can be a very moving experience. We never know what's happening in the lives of the people who are experiencing our art form. And so it's our duty to give them as much of our energy as we possibly can. So this class is half education in terms of lecture style and half watching examples of great performers in how they deliver an energized performance. So we're going to start this with the lecture style. And as Allison mentioned, if you have a question along the first half of the way, please do type it into chat. I am wired on every end, so I'm using the Ethernet cable and the headphone wire, so I don't leave anything to chance with wireless. So hopefully things are sound on your end as well. I have learned that when we go into screen sharing, for some, especially if you're using wireless, that you can have your video off, don't leave the call. But if you have your video off, you might have a better experience of the screen share. So I just offer that to you as we go into the screen sharing time. All right, the first thing you're going to see is the handout for this class. And as Allison mentioned, we will be sending this out afterwards too. So you don't need to try and scribble everything down unless you are a learner whose style is that, right? If the kinesthetic act of writing and taking notes is something that helps you to ingrain materials. I am one of those people. Baritones, I might be talking to you exclusively, but you know that of course, please feel free. But otherwise, you know that you'll be getting this and you can read the entirety at your leisure. So I like to begin this class with talking about what is energy on the global level. As I was developing this class, early last year, I did so actually with assistance from a singer in Chorus Austin, whose name is Michael Starbird, and he is a professor of mathematics and physics at the University of Texas. And so this first part, he and I were back and forth a lot about some of the elements of energy that he thought were important to share as they relate to music making, and you'll see that I think they have a wonderful correlation to what we do. So I pulled open the Webster's Dictionary and went right to the first definitions. And you see them there with the stars underneath the first definitions, right? Which say the strength or vitality required for sustained physical or mental activity. And isn't that what singing is? It is both sustained physical and mental activity. It requires both aspects of our body to be able to produce the desired result. And it requires strength and vitality. I think we would all agree that. If you haven't practiced choreography in some months, you're going to notice. I was one who had been very mindful of keeping those things up until about November. And then I stopped. And it was just about the second week of January now, I guess last week, when I decided to run through the visual plan of Alamo's contest uptune. and see how much was in my body, what was I remembering. And I'm here to tell you, after 2 repetitions of going through it, I was a little winded. my body had not quite held on to it like I wish it may have. So be certain that we are using our bodies as well. But then there are some further definitions, and I think these are equally as wonderful. So 1A, as you see, is a dynamic quality, the capacity of acting or being active, and a usually positive spiritual force, right? And some of you might even use that language when you say, that person has a wonderful energy to be around, right? Even if it's the unconscious awareness that we have in somebody's presence that makes us feel good. The opposite is also true, isn't it? We're aware of prickly auras, as I call them, of people whose energy might feel unpleasant. So we want to be certain when we come to the stage that everything about our energy is in an open and giving a mode that allows the audience to feel welcomed into it. And we'll talk a little bit about some ways to do that later on. You see a couple of more examples of definitions here that are getting just a little bit deeper. Vigorous exertion of power or effort, usable power. And then we get into physics. And this is where Michael was such an asset, and he was terrifically excited to get to share these ideas with me and everybody. So these ideas are important laws of the universe that he wanted to remind us all about. The first is the first law of thermodynamics. Who knew you were going to be getting that today, huh? Which is that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but changed from one form to another. And I think that's a powerful reminder for us, especially in those times when we don't feel like we have much energy, right? We might not be aware of it, but it still exists. It hasn't been destroyed. It might just be in our body in the form of potential energy. Or maybe we didn't get quite as much sleep as we would have liked, and we need to find another source for it. So this is the essential reminder for that there is always energy to be had, even when we don't feel like there may be. All right, and then we get into the 3 principal types of energy. And these are absolutely the basics of physics. I'm sure there are those of you here who are more learned in these elements than I am. So please forgive me for staying very basic with this, but I think it is good for us to cover, again, because it does impact singing and what we do. So you'll see potential energy is listed there, which is the energy of an object that is stored, right? It could be mechanical, it could be gravitational, elastic, magnetic. Right? Imagine if I just held up my coffee mug up here, there is now potential gravitational energy when I let go. Gravity will be the force that pulls it back down to the earth. If you think of a bow and arrow, the bow, once it's pulled back, right, that now is full of potential elastic energy as it is going to spring the arrow into motion. Magnets, as you well know, right, either with a magnet on a metallic surface or 2 magnets coming together. Likewise, if the poles are reversed, you know that they repel. So there are many forms of this potential energy. What we do is typically a version of mechanical energy, right? When we take a breath in, now we are filled with potential energy to do something, right? It is fueling our body to move muscles, and it might be as simple as the muscles of exhalation, right? And when we vibrate our vocal folds, then we get the act of singing, which is releasing that potential energy. Next up, we have kinetic energy. And that, as you see, is the energy of an object in motion. Michael wanted to remind us that it ranges from 0 to a positive value. You cannot have a negative number for kinetic energy, for anything in motion. And sound waves are a great example of what we do. Kinetic energy, sound, right, is identified as one of those forms. because it's how we actually vibrate those air molecules in space, which are moving at various frequencies. So sound is another aspect of how we have these principal elements of energy alive and well. And then you see the last. Mechanical energy is the energy that results from the movement and location of an object. It's the sum of kinetic energy and potential energy. Singing is an example of that, right? We put those two elements together, as I was talking about, and we get something that goes into mechanics. So when the body is at rest after exhaling, there is no possibility of singing, right? With no more air left in our respiratory system, we couldn't vibrate the vocal folds. So when we inhale, and now we have that potential energy, right? We add the kinetic energy, the motion of moving air and vibrating our vocal folds, which translates into the mechanical act of singing. So it's the result of potential and kinetic energy. And that, I think, is a great reminder, because we can always find more energy with each breath that we take. We can let it be a renewed source when we are feeling less than energized. And some of you, I'm sure, have had that experience where if you're doing yoga, or even just the breathing that we do at the beginning of a rehearsal, right, might add a little more warmth to your body, a little extra fire in your belly. It might be a centering element for your consciousness. It might just say, oh, I feel more ready to do this, as you have gotten more of that energy flow now going through your instrument. So those are the basic elements of energy as they relate to the global world of physics, but they are certainly applicable to what we do in our music making. All right, as you see, this quote from Brené Brown is one that I absolutely love, and it relates more to what we do, which is, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. Now, I love that quote for two principal reasons. I believe that what we're talking about in feeling seen, heard, and valued is what we want to foster in our musical rehearsals, be it a quartet or a chorus, right? We also want the audience to feel seen, heard, and valued. These things go both within the musical ensemble and with the audience. We want everyone to feel to give when they are, for example, on the risers, without judgment. The more open we are to that giving, the better our musical product is going to be, right? And when we're able to derive sustenance and strength from the relationship, for example, the relationship between singers, the relationship between a chorus or a quartet and the audience, right? I'm sure you've all had experiences sitting in the audience where you feel empowered from a performance, that you feel like you have been fed, right? That you've gotten sustenance or you've gotten strength from the performance that's happening on stage. And that's usually because you're made to feel comfortable, that you're made to feel valued, that you can be in that place of receiving without any sense of fear or judgment, right? That's the element of connection, which is so powerful. And as you know, is what we are after as performers. So that quote, as Brené Brown says it, is so very powerful. And if you don't know the work of Brené Brown, seek out any of her books or her TED Talks. Videos are on YouTube, and they will change your life. Usually it's just a profound sentence or two like that leaves me reeling for days. All right, so next we get into the actual elements of barbershop as they relate to our judging categories. So the things you're going to see here come from the distillation between SAI's and BHS's judging books. I have taught this class to mixed groups, so that's why you see that happen. But I wanted to incorporate both, and they're basically the same. So what you're going to see here are the four categories with the BHS listed second. So you see sound and singing, for example. And then the basics as they apply to energy. As we go through these things, I might ask you to sing a little bit to experience something with me. And if you have a question through this, like Allison said, please type it into chat. And then she'll help me go through those at the end of this lecture portion before we get into watching a few examples. All right, so what we're starting with is sound, right? And we talk about an energized barbershop sound. That's something that we hear a lot. But what does that actually mean, right? If you look to the third sentence, a barbershop sound of above average quality consists of tones possessing energy. A significant amount of that energy is derived from proper breath support, but a certain amount can also be attributed to a positive, confident mental attitude and the quality of life imparted to the voice by a lifted countenance. So, if I were to sing simply for you a 3-note scale on ooh, ooh, and just do that. If I don't have any breath support and I don't have a positive mental attitude or any lift in my countenance, you'll see and hear this. Ooh, which I think you would agree is not an energized sound. Does it also make you feel comfortable? Probably not. You're going to start to wonder what's wrong with him, right? Especially if I were singing a longer phrase with a lyric. Let's say I'm going to sing Just the Way You Look Tonight, and I take the stage and go, someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold. You get the idea, right? I mean, we kind of laugh at that because we wouldn't dream of wanting to do that. But when we first start, especially newer singers who don't have performance experience, that's very often a default. Again, if you've come from a world of choral singing like classical music, there are still a preponderance of conductors who encourage that, who encourage a face that has no lift at all, who encourage a tone that's more dull because they believe it to be better blending in terms of its sound, right? And no physicality. So very frequently singers come to us with those things in their psyches, and they might be at the subconscious level. So we have to encourage a little bit more than they might believe. Now, what does it mean to access proper breath support as it relates to an energized barbershop sound? In the old days, the answer was more air, right? Those of you who have been around, my mother, by the way, is a 40-year member of Sweet Adelines. So I grew up with the organization. I would go with her virtually weekly to her chapter rehearsals, and the quartet would often be rehearsing at our home. She was a DMA of Region 24, back when Region 24 was in existence, and she held every regional job through the years. But the point of this is that I heard all of those adages, and then as I came into directing Pride Now back in 2002, I was part of the shift, obviously, that we've gone through now the last 15, 20 years. And as we learn more about vocal pedagogy that's actually based on sound science, right? We know how to get to more of these answers without platitudes like use more air. All right, so if, for example, I were going back to that ooh, and you said to me, use more air, I might go, ooh, and flood it with breath. It's not an energized optimal tone yet, right? So the great tools that we now have, right, allow us to realize that the vocal folds don't need to work so hard. You shouldn't feel anything there. That was another chapter in the life of vocal production. You'll know you'll doing it. You'll know you're doing it right when, after singing for a while, you feel tired. Can you believe that in the middle of the last century, voice teachers actually said that? Because it was based on other activities of muscle, right? So after exercising muscle groups, right? If you do arm curls to exercise your biceps, after a certain number of them, you're going to feel that muscle. And then you're going to be aware of the work that you did. And people said, oh, the vocal muscle must be the same. So if we're doing it correctly, after an hour or two of singing, you should feel the work that you've been doing. Oh, heavens. Thankfully, we moved quickly through that phase. And now we know that we want, for example, the pressure both above and beneath the vocal folds to be equalized. That's one of the elements. Lip trills, bubbling is a great way to do that. Straw phonation is a great way to do that. The cup with the hole poked in the bottom of it, a great way to do that. Now, this class is not about those things. It's just about the overall effect that it gets us. So, using that same ooh, if I were to go ooh, you hear that that tone has changed from ooh when I allow my body to collapse and my face to collapse. All right? Would you try that with me? Try it with no lift in your body and no lift on your face. So this is going to be a very poorly energized vocal performance, and you can sing it ooh, or if you're feeling low this morning, or yeah, that's not morning there. Never mind. You don't have any excuse to sing it down an octave. So we'll all sing ooh, everything's down. Go ahead. Ooh. Now simply make the change of lifting the top half of your face. All right, as Britt Helene likes to say, we're going to be a genius from here up, and we're going to be an idiot from here down. Ooh. Try that. Ooh. And now, I'm sure most of you are seated. Get yourself to the front half of your chair. Okay, get yourself out of your waistline. Betty Clipman always says, get your bra line away from your waistline. I love that quote. So that you can have some semblance of lift in the top half of your body and your breath mechanism can work a little more optimally. Okay, and now we're gonna bubble and then we're gonna do the ooh. So we're gonna go, breathe, ooh, and feel how that sound changes. All right, let's bubble and breathe, sing. Ooh. So I hope you're starting to notice that that tone becomes more free and energized from when we were down into our body and our face was down, right? That starts to be how we develop a more ideal energized barbershop sound. Realize that it is not from the addition of muscle. That's incredibly important, right? And our attitude is the last piece of that. So even with those elements in place, if I sing, I'll go back to just the way you look tonight because it's easy to my brain to call up. If I go back and say, I'm going to sing this song because you told me to, in my mental train of thought, here's what you're gonna get. Someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold. Now, I'm not singing poorly, right? It's much better than the first time I sang it from you, but you're still not hooked, right? There's a more energy, certainly, than the first time, but it's not captivating. You wouldn't say it's an artistic sound, right? So you see the last bit of this here talks about artistic sound having vitality, not just technical proficiency, right? So that we're getting the tone that has life, but it also has meaning. And that comes from us having that mental commitment to the song and arrangement, right? And some element of emotional energy that's going to allow our voices to have different colors in it. So let's say that we've gone through the rehearsal process. We are now going to unify how we sing Just the Way You Look Tonight as communicating this message of love that we as the singer want to make the audience be aware of. It's an enduring quality. Let's say that's what we're hooking into, right? We're here in this moment with this person, but when we say things like, someday when the world is cold, we're aware that that is not today, it's not tomorrow, it's not even next month, right? It's someday. When the world is cold, not chilly, not a little less warm, but cold, right? When I'm awfully low, not a little down, but awfully low. So when we have all of those awarenesses and I'm committed to them, then you're going to get a sound that sounds something like this. Someday, when I'm awfully low, When the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you. Are you with me? Are you starting to hear how different things are happening? So there's some texture on some words. Cold, I hope, sounded different from glow. There was pacing nuances now, which are going to impact music and expression in there. But in terms of sound, it doesn't just sound like one robotic sound, right? There's a lot more to it than that. And that comes from allowing the voice to have freedom that is born of the commitment of both mental and emotional energy, right? So all of those elements impact the sound that we make, okay? The last thing that I just want to call to your attention here in the area of sound, pardon me, is that there will be things that you necessarily don't feel, right? There are songs in our oeuvre that are great barbershop songs, but for example, might not be your story or even resonate with your story. Something like The Masquerade is Over, right? Great barbershop ballad. I'm afraid the masquerade is over, and so is love, so is love. So when we sing that song, we might not have lived that story. We might not have anything in our life experience to draw on, but that's when we can go into the land of acting and characterization to bring it to life, to bring those textures to our sound. So I just believe it's important to identify both of those things because you don't necessarily have to feel it on the personal level. You have to be able to tap into whatever the thing is that allows your sound and music to come to life with that story that you are looking to tell from your unit, right? Be it the quartet or chorus, we have to agree on what that is so we can have unity in how we express it. All right, in the music category, we get into these elements that we must unify to be able to communicate with the audience clearly and realize a musically energized performance. So you'll see the first paragraph there talks about the combination of tempo, rhythm, phrasing, dynamics, right? These are all essential elements of the music category that we have to consider that go into our lines, right? Pardon me. You'll see even in this category, it talks about it being totally effective when the performer adds, quote, heart to it, right? We don't want to be aware of your plan. We want to be aware of what you're communicating with that plan. So remember, every choice we make should be in service to the music and the lyric. All right. This next paragraph is all about meeting the technical requirements and then needing to go beyond that. So where does this energy come from? Where does this vitality this paragraph talks about come from, right? So that added vitality helps for the performer to convey any mood, any characterization, any dynamic level, any rhythm, any message. Talking about why is an incredibly important piece of this category. Embellishments in barbershop music are one of the biggest musical features, right? That we need to realize serve a purpose for their existence. Realizing that all of us need to know as much as possible about the music. Those are those last two stars down there, knowing as much as possible about all four parts, right? And then that a rest or a breath is also a part of the musical line. So at the heart of musicality are a couple of ideas. One is that any sustained note has a beginning, a middle, and an end. All right, so if I were going to sing simply one note, this is going to be on the syllable noo, N-O-O, and I didn't allow it to have any awareness of what I just said, it would sound like this. Noo, noo, noo. Not exactly captivating musicality, right? But when I'm aware that it can have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I don't want those three parts to sound the same, then I can do something like this. Noo, noo. turn it around. No, no. Right? So shapes exist with more opportunities than, let's say, just a bigger phrase. Okay? When we get to the examples, you're going to hear some masterful performances with this kind of detail on display. And it's so captivating because it allows us to never sit back, right? As an audience, we're always taken for a ride musically. Nothing is ever going to sit. The finest orchestras play this way. Without being asked to, right? That's what makes a good symphonic orchestra player, is because they all have this musicality at the heart of how they play. All right? Try that with me. Would you just sing a static new? Let's all just sing new, new, new. 3 in a row. Let's go. New, new, new. All right, now let's add some shape to it. So let's say it's going to start just somewhere around mezzo piano and crescendo to mezzo forte. So we're not talking a crazy crescendo, just a gentle crescendo through the life of that note. All right, let's try that. Here we are, and no, no, no. Can you hear that that tone now has more musical energy? But remember, it's not just getting louder. It can also be a diminuendo. Try entering between mezzo forte and diminuending to around mezzo piano. Okay, now again, we don't have to go fortissimo to pianissimo. Just comfortable middle loud to comfortable middle soft. So we're going to have no, no, no in the shape. Here we are, and no, no, no. And that also has musical energy. All right, so the idea that the beginning, the middle, and end of a note are not the same. Now, of course, we are aware of phrases, right? Phrases have shapes. And very often we'll talk about that phrase crescendoing, that phrase diminuendoing. Maybe it does a turnaround of diminuendoing and crescendoing, you know, or maybe it does the hairpins of crescendo diminuendo through the phrase. Those are all ways to shape it. If I were, for example, to sing, tomorrow's another day, and we say, I want the overall impression of that phrase to crescendo. Okay, so I know I'm going to start a little softer and have somewhere to go. Tomorrow's another day. But are you noticing that as I sustain row and day, that sustained note also has energy? If I don't, you'll hear, tomorrow's another day. So that phrase crescendoed, but we just forgot about what we just talked about, right? That a note has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So within the context of an overall crescendo or an overall diminuendo, there are more opportunities for more shapes, right? So knowing that we're going to have that phrase crescendo, I'm going to then say, okay, row is an opportunity for another implied crescendo, which means I'm going to start it a little softer and have it grow a little bit. Same thing on day. Tomorrow's another day. Are you with me? So we still have the commitment of the crescendo through the line. It's just not all getting louder. And at the heart of that is an artistic message, right? Because when I speak to you, even if I were getting more and more urgent, which is when a voice crescendos, my voice still has inflection upon parts of words that get a little softer and a little louder, right? And that's the lyrical line that our music is based off of. So that's the marriage of music and expression, actually. All right. The last thing about the music category that I want to call your attention to is about tempo and pulse. So again, in the old days, and I can remember some coaches coming even into Pride in my first couple of years, saying that we needed more energy in our uptune. And the way to do that in these people's minds was to sing it faster. Right? Now, that can be a factor. That tempo can certainly be an element of energy. And we very well might be singing a song at a tempo that is too slow to actually compel the audience, right? Right now, Alamo's uptune is I Love a Piano. the old Irving Berlin tune. I love a piano, I love a piano, I love to hear somebody play. That tune. And along the way, in terms of developing it for the chorus in my imagination, I came upon Liza Minnelli's performance. And she sings it slow and sultry, like the piano is her lover. It's incredible. The characterization is amazing. She sings, I love a piano, I love a piano. Equally as appropriate, a tempo. But when I played with that with my music team before we were doing it with the chorus, it was a disaster. And I knew that it would not fit this chorus's personality. That's just not who Alamo is. So we needed to find the faster tempo that still swings. I love a piano, I love a piano, right? And still has that backbeat without being too fast. I love a piano, I love a piano, I love to hear somebody play, right? Then suddenly all the pulse goes away. And as an audience, you'd be like, ah, why are they so manic about that piano? It feels a little assaultive instead of invitational, right? So that's an element of consideration. Okay, the other, of course, is pulse. So let's say that I chose that song, but I am a downbeat-oriented human being. I'm not, but if I were, and I imposed it on the song, you might get, I love a piano, I love a piano, I love to hear somebody play. And that doesn't feel right, does it? Because Berlin wrote it with that swing backbeat rhythm in mind. So being aware of the pulse, the actual rhythm, how it's going, right, is an important consideration too. We are wired one of those two ways. So if I were to ask you to sing, your lyric is going to be doobie 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 doo wah doo. Say that. Doobie 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 doo wah doo. If I ask you to sing doobie 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 doo wah doo, you can sing that in your octave. Doobie 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 doo wah doo. Okay, do that one more time and doobie 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 doo wah doo. You'd agree that's downbeat, right? Doobie 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 doo wah doo. Okay, we're getting that pulse. Now we can take the same syllables and change it to a different rhythm, so we're going to reinforce backbeat. Doobie 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 doo wah doo. Do that with me and doobie 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 doo wah doo. Now, for some of you, the first one was easier. For some of you, the second one was easier, right? Some of us walk down the street and hear a marching band. Da, 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 and we live on 1 and 3. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some of us walk down the street and hear a jazz band or a kind of drummer, right? Which is the doobie 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 doo wah doo. Why this is important is because as we put groups of people together, those wirings, as you can imagine, will then impact how we sing rhythm, and especially subtleties of rhythm. So as you get better and better in terms of performance levels, more of these details become important of unity and in synchronization. All right, so if we have a downbeat person next to a backbeat person, right, you can tell that the smaller notes aren't going to be sung quite the same. All right, the other piece of this I just want to call your attention to very quickly is that as we are paying attention to pulse, so for example, me being a backbeat person really has to focus on 1 and 3 when we're looking to reinforce them. So if I'm doing that, I'm going to go doobie 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 doo wah doo. And can you hear how choppy that line has instantly gotten? So with the focus, then we have to say, okay, so good, that's a good first step. Now we need to say, let's make that a phrase where we're going to be aware of the beat, and maybe we're only going to reinforce the downbeat. Doobie 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 doo wah doo. Or maybe every 2 beats, 2 bars. Doobie 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 doo wah doo. Doobie 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 doo wah doo. And can you hear that that's getting more legato versus doobie 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 doo wah doo, right? Where I'm chasing after each beat. The other piece of that is after I'm chasing after each beat, I'm going to get faster and faster. It's the very human tendency for someone who's not oriented to downbeat as they reinforce the beat. Likewise, downbeat people who go after 2 and 4 and the doobie 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 doo wah doo. Doobie 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 doo what do. When they start really thinking about it and emphasizing those beats, they slow down because beat one gets longer. So it's important in backbeat to still be aware of 1 and 3. They're just not getting the emphasis. All right, that's all I want to say about tempo and rhythm. We could do a whole class on that. But those are important elements of the musical energy, right? All right, expression is all about the lyric. All right, so take away the parts and leave it with the lyrical line. And what do we have? What are we going to communicate with that lyric? You'll see, of course, the second sentence, which I love. Indeed, energy is the key to whether or not the listener will continue to listen to the performance. And didn't you experience that when I sang, someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold. It's hard to do. But somewhere around the third breath, wouldn't you be inclined to look in your program or turn to your neighbor and talk about the costume or shoes or what you had for lunch or anything else beside the tedious performance that's happening on stage? So it's essential to bring energy to our lyrical line because it's going to bring out the emotional communication, all right? In the second paragraph, you see the performer must maintain consistent energy, not allowing it to drop for even a moment, right? We call that stamina. So if I were to start, for example, with a lot of energy and then it wanes, you would be aware of it. Someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you. Right? I lost energy throughout. It also happens with favorite moments. So for example, going back to how we sing today, a lot of people love the ending, right? And it typically happens that when we get into the last, so take my hand, take my hand. A lot of energy comes into the room because we love the barbershop embellishment that's going on there. And the first minute and 10 seconds has just been up into that point. So we can't have favorite moments because the audience will notice. Okay, the whole song needs to be our favorite moment that is consistent in its delivery of the emotional lyric. Obviously, we've talked about synchronization, tempo, dynamics. All of these things can be impacted, right, if we don't have energy or if it's not unified across the group. You'll see 2 stars here. Speech like lyrical energy plus OVP. OVP is Ryan Heller's shorthand for optimal vocal posture. And that means a relaxed larynx, a relaxed tongue, and that gently domed palate, right? The elements of vocal production that we want all the time. The reason those 2 things are paired together is because as soon as we start to talk about the lyric, we typically forget about excellent singing. So to go back to just the way you look tonight, that would sound like this. If I'm thinking inflection and pacing and dynamics and energy in my lyrical line, it could sound like this. Someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you. Can you hear that my sound has gotten tense? Right, the first thing that we talked about in the sound category, I'm not riding the breath with equal pressure. So my larynx is high. I'm having to push a little to get sound out. My tongue is tense. My palate has come down. So all of those things have compromised an optimal sound, right? So we want those elements to stay intact while we maintain the speech-like energy. Someday when I'm awfully low, someday when I'm awfully low, right? You can hear also the second star in that example. So that breathing is an element of communication and forward motion. Because there's a comma there, someday, comma, when I'm awfully low, comma, when the world is cold, comma, I might be inclined to put that space in. Someday when I'm awfully, right? You don't have to. Someday when I'm awfully low. That would work too. but I'm here to remind us that rests, that breathing, are as equal an opportunity for a place to have energy and forward motion. And again, remember that forward motion is not about speed. It's about communicating viable thoughts. All right? So you can sing very slowly, someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, and still sing with forward motion, because I'm thinking about the intent of the lyric that I'm singing. What do I want to tell you, right? What's the overarching message of the song? All right, and that brings us to energy in showmanship, or performance, as the society calls it, which of course is physical energy, right? So it adds a special shine to the visual performance, taking it beyond the routine into magic. I love it. And even in the video that just came out with the renaming, and I just realized I need to rename this now for our renamed showmanship category. So I will take care of that edit after we're done. Is energy is the life force of the category, right? That doesn't mean just moving for movement's sake, right? That's something that we're very guilty of. Someone comes in and says, you know what, you sound great, but you stand still. And then suddenly people are going, someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you. And that's not meaningful, right? That's just random flailing around, or the literal stuff, which is a hot button for me, right? If I sing the word think and go like this, oh, Lord, you've lost me. It makes me think of the old acting quote, where one night an audience member goes to see the play, and the famous actor is on stage, and he does a gesture to the moon, and the person in the audience says, "Oh, what a beautiful gesture." And then the next night, his friend gets a pair of tickets and says, "Hey, let's go see this play." And he says, "Well, I've seen it already, but it was pretty great. So let's go back." And he goes the next night, and the understudy is on. And they think, oh, well, you know, we'll give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And the understudy comes out, and at that same moment, in the same line, does the same thing. But that person turns to his friend and says, oh, look how beautiful the moon is. Now, isn't that what we want with our physicality, right? It's not about the gesture. It's about the communication. What are we seeking to express to the audience? And that is true of choreographic plans as well. If it's busy for its own sake, it's not serving the art. All right. And I know Sophie is here, and I think she would give me an amen on that as well. All right. Adding energy to a performance that's well grounded in basic vocal and musical techniques will be rewarded and recognized. Right. Again, being aware that this is not muscle. It's never about push and force. It's about being grounded and allowing everything that we do to serve the art. All right. You'll see that last thing, the goal is always the same. We want to allow energy to flow through our vocal line as well as through our bodies, so that we can communicate with our audience. And then I just love this Eleanor Roosevelt quote. It takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan, right? So a lot of us say, oh, I wish I could do that. Oh, I wish I could be as good as XYZ. But, you know, as soon as you have that thought, start making the plan. And then take your action steps to realizing that plan. You have the energy to do it, right? If you can say, I wish I could, you have the energy to say, here's how I'm going to. All right, the last page, we're not going to spend any time on this because we've talked about them, but it's just a great visual. Has the elements of the categories with some of the descriptors of an energized performance. And then I highlight that middle zone because that's where we want to live, right? We typically have strengths as performers. Some of us might be good at maintaining an excellent vocal posture and singing with dynamics. Some of us might be good at phrasing and tempo and rhythm and pulse. Some of us might like to live in the lyrical land, right? And that's where our energy goes. So knowing where you are in any of these circles is important so that you can bring your awareness to the other pieces of it. All right, and then lastly, it's important for each of us to ask why, right? Why is something getting louder or faster? Why is there an echo? Why is there a swipe? Don't be satisfied with just doing it, but knowing that reason, because that's going to allow us to find the emotional energy that's going to feed that line. All right, everything has a reason. And when we can back it up with that reason, the audience is more inclined to get it, number one, and to stay involved through the whole journey of a song. Okay, remember that pop songs these days are between 2 and 2.5 minutes. And that's because all of those producers have found that that's the average attention span of a listener today. You know, our songs are typically a bit longer, especially a ballad, right? Can be 3.5, even close to 4 minutes these days. So it's easy to lose an audience member if we are not fully energized throughout. All right, just a couple of important reminders there are staying unlocked and open, right? It's going to feel vulnerable when we risk that. Staying open with our core, and that I put here because it looks like this. So if I stand, if I were to come on stage and suddenly go like this, where I cross my hands in front of my midsection, you've seen this, right? It's a very frequent nervous position. Or in rehearsals, if I am in a particularly bad mood and I, you know, am here, I hit that pose. Okay, impress me, you know. I'm like, what do you got for me tonight, Heller? This rehearsal is already long. Those are closing down energy, right? Especially the fig leaf, where we cross in front of our core, which is our actual energy center. So staying open and vulnerable by putting that out there, right? This place basically from sternum all the way to pelvic floor is wide open, and that feels risky. And remember, it feels risky because we're also animals. And that part of us, in terms of our animal physiology, was once protected when we were quadrupedal. When we were on all fours, right? Then this most exposed part of us, where our guts live, was actually protected by bones, the ribs around them, right? Everything had a defense mechanism around it. And then when we stand up, right? And then we stand up to sing, and we ask you to put this section on display, right? We ask you, first of all, to relax it, which is already risky. We allow you or ask you to expand it on each breath, right? And for some, that's very risky. And then also realizing the subconscious monkey brain says, danger, at any moment, a saber-toothed tiger could jump out and attack, right? And being open and vulnerable like that puts us at more risk. All right, so realizing, of course, that that's not going to happen. We are not going to be attacked by the saber-toothed tiger. Can help quell that flight or flight response in there. So risk it, right? The safety is there. And then the connection of body, mind, emotions, spirit, and will, right? We want all of those pieces to come together that say, I'm here because I want to be. I'm excited to share this with the audience. Let that energy infuse our body, bring our whole commitment to it, and all of the beautiful physical, mental, and spiritual, emotional energy that makes us us, so that those elements don't have to be shut down. All right. So unless there are questions, Allison, I'm going to go into seeing some great examples of these elements.
There aren't any questions, Ryan. I think everybody's been scribbling down your pearls of wisdom, even though you told us there was a handout to come. So no questions at the moment.
All right, excellent. We will go into seeing then some beautiful examples. And as I mentioned, I am wired here. So if you are wireless and want to turn your video off, you might have a better experience of this. We're not going to watch this whole playlist, but I'm going to send the playlist to Allison as well, so you can have the link to it, because all of these are great examples in some fashion of the elements that we are talking about. All right, and for this, as we go, I'm going to open chat now so I can actually see it. I would love for you to type into chat what you're seeing and hearing. What kind of energy are you getting from these performers? All right, so after a couple of seconds, go ahead and throw an impression into chat. so we can share with one another. So we'll see a couple of soloists, and we'll see a couple of ensembles as well. We're going to start with Sammy Davis Jr. singing one of his most iconic songs.
I couldn't think of doing a show for my first time in Hamburg without doing this song, because it was so lucky for me. What kind of fool am I who never fell in love? It seems that I'm the only one that I have been thinking of. What kind of man is this that could not see what could be seen by almost everyone but me? What kind of lips are these that lie with every kiss, that whispered empty words of love, that left me alone like this? Why can't I fall in love like any other man? And maybe then I'll know what kind of fool I am.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. I'm sorry to stop it. I'm loving your comments. I agree, Allison, right? Goosebumps galore through this. Many of you have noticed the effective use of pauses, how he phrases through this, right? It feels sincere. Genuine was a word I saw quite a lot. You can feel the connection even if you close your eyes, right? Very vocally free, a ton of energy, obviously in his voice, but also in the lyric, in the music. That way, you heard some embellishments. I saw Maureen just said, right? Some changes to the melody. That last, it was a swipe, wasn't it? Kind of fool I am. So remember, our devices actually come from popular music. We've put them into barbershop, but they are devices that soloists use. Yes, the guitar in the voice, Jody, and the band's about to come in. But I love that guitar and voice duet. And someone, forgive me for not remembering, mentioned too, it felt like he was singing it for himself, right? What kind of fool am I? He's asking himself these questions, and it feels like we are getting to witness it, right? Without being disconnected from it, as opposed to the kind of a song that would go out into the audience, and include us all. We feel like we're there witnessing this kind of behind the fourth wall that way. It's a very powerful performance. And I think you would agree, full of energy. This next one, very different. And we're going to watch the whole thing because it's full of all kinds of devices and a kind of quintessential Sweet Adeline dumb. And it's the one and only Liza Minnelli singing New York, New York.
Ladies and gentlemen, Liza Minnelli.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I wanna be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray and step around the heart of it. New York, New York. I wanna wake up in a city that doesn't sleep, to find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. My little town
talk about a performance, huh? Your comments are fantastic. I love to see what everybody says as I do this around the world. And I think you would all agree, she is her, right? She's definitely her mother's daughter. You can hear Judy in her sound. But she is unbridled, Liza. You hear all the elements of energy we were talking about, right? Talk about physicality, talk about vocal color, all the ways that she uses her voice. Someone mentioned a little bit of the growling stuff she does, right? And that last New York, which is like a little barbershop baritone. It has a little tiddly action in it. Did you notice the key change and the elevation of energy into the key change? And the audience freaks out. I get tears in my eyes every single time, and I've watched this hundreds of times now. But isn't this like a barbershop performance, right? We have a relentless tempo and pulse. Her and the band are awesome. We have all of the things that we do in our performance. We even have a key change, which, remember, always has a reason for being there, and it deserves energy and attention to bring it to life that way. Yeah, I think it's incredible. Years ago, when I first started in Pride, someone even said, "Oh, we should wear that costume. What a great Sweet Adelines costume!" And our costume committee quickly shut that down, unfortunately. But one of these days, maybe I'll wear it.
Welcome to the Disney Bundle, where Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus come to life on all your...
Welcome to the Disney Bundle. All right, we are on now to the one and only Maria Callas. And again, I won't play this whole clip, and then we're going to go to a couple of barbershop things before we wrap. All right, here is Callas. I'm sorry to stop it there. Your comments are fantastic. And again, so much of what you're saying are things that many folks have seen and said. What you're going to see if you were to keep watching is she comes out of that position with the arms, and it's incredibly impactful. So I'm sorry to have to cut it short because it is very meaningful when she does. Also, I wonder about like the television special aspect of this, you know, since that's how it was being produced. But you get a whole lot of what she's doing, and your comments have reflected that, right? And Carmen, if you know, this is the habanero from Carmen, is the gypsy's seductive, flirty, powerful. Someone said fire and embers. I saw a comment fly by. I love that. Right, there's a complicated persona here, but you get a lot of it just from her eyes and how she does all of that, and the way she uses her voice. I use Callas because she was controversial in the last century, because she used her whole voice, meaning actually a mixed voice and her low register. there were many who didn't like her and who didn't want to hire her. A lot of the impresarios at opera houses around the world said that sound was crass and should not be used by a soprano. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. And these days, most everyone uses all of their entire voice. But here it was relatively revolutionary. And I love, of course, the color in her sound. Talk about vocal energy. But again, the other elements we're exploring as well. So next up, we're going to go to some barbershop and see, this is the ladies.
Gulf Coast Region 10, the ladies.
Let me just pause that. We're going to watch their up tune. There we go. And notice a lot about the tempo and pulse in this. As you'll see, there are a few changes along with anything else you might notice.
Cuddle up a little closer, sweet lovey mine, sweet lovey mine. Just cuddle up and be my little clinging vine. I'd like to feel your cheeks so rosy, like to make you comfy, cozy, 'cause I love from head to toesy, my sweet lovey mine, sweet lovey mine. Come and cuddle up a little closer, my little lovey mine. Cuddle up and be my little, be my clinging vine. How I like to feel your cheeks so rosy, I like to make you comfy, cozy, 'cause I love you from your head to your toesy. Sweet lovey, my sweet lovey, don't you know that you're the only one I adore? Oh, come on and cuddle up a little closer to me now. Sweet lovey mine. Cuddle up and won't you be my little sweet clinging vine. I love you so much, I need you so much, from your head right down to your toesy. Come on and cuddle, sweet little lovey mine. Come on and cuddle up, my sweet lovey, sweet lovey mine. Be mine.
All right. Yeah, it's a complete journey, isn't it? So I'm loving your comments here too, right? 3 different tempos, all backbeat, but obviously the constant sense of increase, right? As it builds, excitement and characterization gets added to it too, doesn't it? As it starts with that kind of sultry, slow burn feel in terms of tempo. Someone else just said that you love that they are equally individual and unified, right? It's a quartet unit without sacrificing the individual personalities. Let's remember that's also true in choruses. That way we don't want you to not be you. We want you to be you and to come forward into whatever it is that you are delivering musically. Plus, I love that last bass hanger. Oh my God, right? I mean, just talk about a explosion of overtones. Oh, it's such a thrill. And all of the things we were talking about, right? You can hear the vocal energy, you can hear the musical energy, not only with the tempo and pulse, but with the shaping at the small level and the phrase level. Obviously, a lot of lyrical hook through a lyric that repeats 3 times. Did you even notice? It's not exactly that interesting of a lyric. Cuddle up a little closer, lovey mine, right? And you say that like 3 times in a row. I need you so much, I love you so much, from your head down to your toesy. So cuddle up, lovey mine. Not exactly great literature that we're talking about here, but they make it captivating and they make it meaningful. So it is full of lyrical energy that we want to watch and listen to. And then the physicality of it, right? Did you notice that they didn't do planned choreography? You might not have noticed it because they were so free physically and in it. So now notice I'm not saying don't. Please don't misquote me. I'm not saying quartets, you don't ever have to do planned choreography. But for them, for this song, it fit. For them to bring their own physicality to it. All right? And so that's where we are going to leave things with our barbershop fix, hearing them do all of the elements that we're talking about, rather.